Today, I really wanted to have Jack on the podcast to talk about marketing. It's something that everybody knows I love. I always talk about marketing, but specifically authentic marketing, because I wanted to just give you a bunch of kudos, Jack, because with Deadline Funnel, I think that this is something that y'all do so well. But I'm curious, where does that stem from? Did you have a really bad experience in the past and you're like, I never want that to happen to my customers? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, I've never thought about that question, but now that you're asking it, I think that I came up when internet marketing was like really in its early stages, and I've seen the evolution, and where we're at these days is much better. There's a lot more heart-centered entrepreneurs. I think your audience is probably full of people who really just want to reach a wide audience. They've got a message to get out into the world. There was a little bit more of a sort of an edge or a ruthlessness to early days internet marketing, and I think I'm glad that I saw those days, but I think that really shaped me in terms of not wanting to emulate that, and just trying to get the message across, but come across in a way where people could really sense that this is true and this is real. And I know that's a struggle. You and I were talking just before we hit record. That's a struggle for a lot of people, where they think, look, I want to spread the word, but I'm not the type of person who likes to talk about myself all the time and brag and talk about how great I am. And sometimes people struggle with that. And so that's a real challenge. And so I think when it comes to marketing, a lot of creators know what they want to say to their audience, and they know they have a mission. They've got something that they want to tell the world. They know that they're changing lives, but they're not used to talking about themselves and their stuff. And so how do you part of them is holding back because I don't want to come off as narcissistic and having a big ego and just sounding like a pushy salesperson. But I also want to get the word out there. So you can see how these two things are fighting against each other, because if you're psychologically holding yourself back, you're not going to do everything you can to get the message out there. So I think that's a big struggle for a lot of creators out there.
This is such a great approach, again, to marketing, that authentic, like, hey, it's actually real. I love that, but also on the back end, it makes my life so much easier because I don't have to remember. It's like, okay, the cart's closing, especially for anybody, y'all, don't close your carts at midnight. Are you really going to stay up until midnight and turn off those sales buttons? No, but you could do that and not have to worry about it because everything will redirect if you have Deadline Funnel. This is something that I use personally when I do my launches. I'll have my sales pages, and then as soon as they're done, they authentically switch to something else. They go to a waitlist page, or they go to my main page, or they say, hey, this offer has expired. And I just appreciate that it makes my life easier. So thank you, because it's a great product and it really works. But I'm curious, do you see, like, as content creators, is there a way that we can kind of approach creating authentic marketing, but also driving demand for what we have to offer without being so in your face? Yeah. I think that this question comes up a lot, especially for, I think a lot of our audience is newer business owners, and they have this timidity when it comes to selling. They're like, I don't want to be too aggressive, but I also want to use the right sales tactics. So what would you say to someone who's having that struggle right now?
Yeah, I love this question. So the most important thing is to stop thinking about what it is that you sell, okay? Because I say this, you probably heard me say this on Amy Porterfield's podcast. I say this all the time, which is no one, and I tell my team this quite often, they're tired of hearing it. No one woke up today saying, gosh, I hope that there's yet another software program that I can pop in my credit card and start paying monthly or annually for yet another software as a service. And yet we have thousands of clients. So why? Because what we sell is a delivery mechanism for a result. So whatever it is that you're selling, whether it's a coaching program, an online online course, and you're doing actual done for you consulting, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're selling, it is just a delivery mechanism for Life 2.0 or Them 2.0 of where they want to get to. So there's a transformation in between, and your job is to talk about the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So you're talking about them and their problems. So step number one is forget about the fact that you're selling stuff and it's the features and the benefits. Like, that's not the time for this. Talk about them and the problems that they have and the challenges. And the more that you can put that to words, whether it's written or whether it's on a podcast, so that someone says, oh my gosh, that is exactly the problem that I'm going through. It's freaking me out. It sounds like you are in my head because you understand my problems and you've described it in a way that is 100% spot on, but I've never explained it exactly that way, even to my spouse. But you just said it. Like, I am listening. I'm all ears. So once you can describe the problem and the frustration and the emotions that they're going through, then what I would do is it's not time yet to talk about it. And here's how you solve it with XYZ problem, right? That even sounds salesy. What you want to do is you want to talk about a change in thinking or a modification in their action. So in other words, not your product yet, but you're talking about what is the fundamental change. So for example, you might have a framework. And so like step 4 of that framework might be what you want to talk about on the podcast. And so if I were structuring a podcast, it would be, okay, what one single problem are we going to be addressing on this podcast? And I would open it up with words that would really bring someone in. So if someone has that problem, they're stopping what they're doing and they say, okay, this is what I need to listen to right now because this is exactly the problem that I have. Tell me how to solve this. And then I would talk about the one thing that you can, or the 3 things that you can do to fix that problem. Again, not yet talking about this, but then I would do this really cool twist that I teach in a program that we have called Stealth Selling. Because we want to teach people how to sell without sounding salesy. And so what we do is, one of the things that I teach is, then I talk about how someone solved that problem. So it would sound, I'm going to do this off the top of my head, but it would sound something like, I'm jumping into, we've already talked about the problem. So I'm just going to jump into, okay, so if that interests you today, I'm going to share with you point 3 of my 5-step ABC framework. And what is really cool is I'm going to share with you the story of Abby Ashley and how she took the concept that I'm going to teach you today and how she went from the same problem that I just described, and she was making $10,000 a month in her business, to instantly making $60,000 a month in her business just by applying the tip that I'm going to share with you in the next 30 minutes. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and jump in. Boom, they're like, okay, I'm sold. Now I'm not talking, so I've started by talking about their problem, the listener, and then I've linked it to a story about a client. So now I'm bringing in a testimonial of a client, and I've dropped, so just dropping in the fact that I have a client, I don't need to say, by the way, I have something to sell you, because they're a client, they obviously bought something. So even if this is your first podcast, you understand without me even saying it, oh, this person is in business doing something, but they're not interested in that yet, but you've already planted that seed. So it's not a big shock like, oh, okay, you're selling something. Like you're kind of dropping these little breadcrumbs, and people are learning about this as they go. But first you're talking about them, then you're talking about how, like, the specific idea, and how you're going to tell a story through one of your clients, and then you can bring it back to something like, hey, if that really interests you, you can learn about my 5-step framework, and step 3 is what we went over today. So just download the free framework at mysite.com/whatever. And so that could be the structure of the podcast, but it doesn't sound or feel salesy, and yet I'm resonating with the audience because I'm talking about their problems.
Yeah, this was like, I need like the mic drop, like a sound effect or something, because that was like a mini training in Sales 101, and it was so good. So if anybody was just like, oh my gosh, hang on, and like go back and listen to everything that Jack just said, because it was so good. Because I think that the approach has to start with exactly what you were saying, is you're making it about them. It's not about you. It's never been about you. It is 100% about them and the version of themselves that they're trying to become, or the problem that they're trying to solve. And I think that anytime you start with that foundation in mind, like, you're gonna win.